Hello friends, today I am going to deliver a lecture on criticism, visible and invisible. This critical essay is written by Northrop Frye. Before going to start this lecture, we must take a little bit more information about this critical essay. Northrop Frye is one of the eminent new critics. He is regarded as a sort of critical cartographer concerned with nothing short of the total dream of a man. He is well known for his work Anatomy of Criticism. So his great work is known as Anatomy of Criticism. It is written in 1957. So let's move. What are the contents are included into this particular essay? The essay Criticism Visible and Invisible appeared originally in College English in 1964. The essay deals with the development found in Frye critical theory and distinction between the knowledge about and knowledge of criticism. So let's move. What is the exactly distinction between two things? Distinction between knowledge of things and knowledge about the things. According to Northrop Frye, there are two levels of understanding. Plato calls them the level of nous and the level of dianoia. The former nous means knowledge of things and the latter dianoia means knowledge about things. Knowledge about things preserves the split between subject and object. What is learned is an objective body of facts set over against subjects. It is essentially unrelated to the subject. On the contrary, knowledge of things implies some kind of identification of essential unity of subject and object. This is a explanation related to first point. Two levels of understanding literature already we discuss. Again, Plato calls them level of nous and the level of dianoia. It is also we have discussed here. Principles involved in the levels of knowledge. There are three principles involved in above mentioned conception of knowledge or understanding. Its two levels. These are follows. First, learning about things is the necessary prelude to the knowledge of things. Secondly, knowledge about things is the limit of teaching. Knowledge of things cannot be taught. Here, the possibility of the identity which can link together knower and known is indemonstrable. Thirdly, nous is the name same knowledge as dianoia about it is relation between knower and known which is learned, which is differ from others. It means whatever we have got knowledge, it is depend upon both knower and known. Generally we have a little bit general knowledge, but we don't have detailed knowledge of particular things. So whenever we are going to learn, for example, cycle or bike, it is initially we have knowledge of how to drive a bike or car. Literature is like a driving car. It means those who drive a car, it depends upon the person. If the expert driver will drive at any speed anywhere, but new driver will affect number of things, he will come across hurdles. Next point, criticism should be point beyond itself. It means we must focus on beyond the things. All teaching of literature must point beyond itself. The revolution in the teaching of English associated with the phrase new criticism began by challenging the tendency to accept knowledge about literature as a substitute for literary experience. New criticism developed its own techniques of talking about the work. It means we should go beyond the knowledge. As per the writer or critic has concerned themselves, they will try to prune that according to their own level. The metaphor of test. According to Fry, the metaphor of test expresses a real truth in criticism. However, no metaphor is without pitfalls. The sense of test is contrast sense. The major arts are based on the senses of distance. The critic can be called astral government and literal as kind of disembodied cookery. This metaphor is frequently employed by writers. For example, it is found in the opening of the Henry Fielding's novel Tom Jones. The conception of test is popular one. This is because it confers great social prestige on the critic. The man of test is gentleman. So, critic who has wishes to be a gentleman is bound to attach much importance to his test. Next, the X is failure formula. If the above point is true, the critic's contribution to literature seems to be a futile. For instance, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, F.R. Lewis have abused Milton, yet Milton's greatness as poet is unaffected. Secondly, in a journal, an eminent critic has said that satire must have a moral norm. The critic called Jonathan Wild as failure as no character in it has represented a moral norm. It means we must take a moral from the any work. No critical principle can possible follow because except some kind of pseudo critical moral anxiety. Take for example the statement King Lear is a failure because it is indecorous to represent a king on the stage as an insane. Then we have to move another point, arguments against evaluation criticism. Critical Dadaism is a logical form of evaluating criticism. Evaluating criticism is mainly effective only when its valuation are foreseeable. For example, in his guide to culture, Ezra Pound expresses some disinterested admiration for the lyrical elegies of Thomas Hardy. As a result, the effect of the book is as though a garrulous drunk had suddenly sobered up and begun talk sense. However, Fry's point is different. According to it, the work of literature is beyond criticism, and criticism can nothing but lead. Next point is internal and external contexts regarding potentiality of literature. Fry, there are two contexts in which a work of literature is potential. They are the internal and external context. Internally, the writer has a potential theme and tries to actualize it in what he writes, while externally, the literary work becomes a potential experience for students, critics, and readers. Here, the work of literature is actualized in itself. A bad poem or novel is one which is a potential literary experience had not been actualized. It means it depends upon the person or critic or writer, whatever he had given his experience as well as his own point of view, it will be reflected in his work through judgment as well as evaluation. According to Fry, there is no genuinely critical reason for re-evaluation. Re-evaluation is again evaluation of particular thing. So next point is that criticism should not encourage separation of students and literature. It is an essential point of this particular theory. Fry further says that all the methods of criticism and teaching are bad if they encourage the persisting separation of student and literary work. On the other hand, all these methods are good if they are tried to overcome it. The tendency to persistent separation is the result of shifting the critical attention from the object of literary experience to something else. Shakespeare's sonnets. It seems that Rose felt literary criticism was not genuine intellectual discipline at all. Next point is plurality of methods. Critics' confusion. Fry does not believe in plurality of critical methods, though he agrees to the division of labor in critical operations. He does not believe that there are schools of criticism attached to different metaphysical assumptions. This idea seems to Fry to reflect nothing but confusion in critical theory. Next point is that criticism has ethical end. This is a very important point is given by Northrop Frye. Criticism must have some ethical norms. According to Frye, the end or aim of criticism and teaching is not an aesthetic but an ethical end. For this end, the works of literature are not things to be contemplated but powers to be absorbed. The aesthetic attitude loses its connection with literature as an art and becomes socially anxious. To treat literature seriously as a social moral force is to pass into the genuine experience of it. This means that the criticism should be attached with the social ethics or norms. It is not only the criticizing on particular things. For example, but an examination in English literature can not pass beyond the level of critical knowledge. There is no assured way of telling from the outside difference between a student who knows literature and a student who merely know about it. It is not possible to us to evaluate the students through the examination. We don't have sufficient evaluation method to analyze the particular point of view. Next point is criticism and commentary. Fry asserts that a large part of criticism is concerned with commentary. A major work of literature has a vast amount of commentary attached to it. So, according to a critic, the prolix says, our ideal in English study is to amass as much commentary as possible upon the literary works so as to let the world know how deeply we respect it. This remark contains an important critical principle. It is an illusion that only great literature can be commented on. The existence of such commentary proves its greatness. It is a writer's merits that make the criticism on him rewarding, but it is not merit that make it possible. Next, another point is that teaching literature is difficult and impossible. According to Fry, it is more difficult to teach literature to the students or anyone else. According to Yeats, what fascinates us is the most difficult among things and not what is impossible. Teaching literature is impossible and so it is difficult, yet it must be tried constantly and placed at the center of the whole educational process. This is because at every level the understanding of words is urgent and crucial. So that's why we must focus on teaching literature is difficult and impossible. It's said by Northrop Frye due to we cannot reach at the mind of the reader as well as the students. Criticism separates the good from the bad in literature. This point is very important point of our theory. Criticism separates the good from the bad in literature. Then Fry deals with the belief that the critic is deeply concerned with evaluation and also separating the good from the bad literature. First, the area of literature should not be restricted to the conventionally literary but expanded to the entire area of verbal experience. Hence, the evaluating activity should not be concerned solely with civil wars in conventionally literary field. Secondly, the distinction of good and bad is not simple opposing of the conventional literary to the conventionally subliterary. This is a point we have discussed. Last one more point, central activity of criticism. Finally, Fry speaks about central activity of criticism. It is essentially one of establishing context for the works of literature which is being studied. This means the act of relating them to the other things. Relation of context accounts for nearly the whole of the factual basis of criticism. The central activity itself has a further context, a lower and upper limit on the. Thank you.